going to go over the other side of the desk. Alison Sargent is joining us as well to look at how newspapers have been marking the US's final withdrawal from Afghanistan. What have you found the papers are saying then, Alison?
Well, Stuart, despite America's longest war finally being over, there is no sense of celebration in the papers today. The headlines from the U.S. papers are actually brutally dry. We can take a look at the Washington Post. They write simply, America exits Afghanistan. The New York Times is even more factual on their front page. U.S. forces leave Kabul. Evacuation ends. Now, that actually is an image of celebration on the front page there, but it is the Taliban celebrating what they see as their victory by firing their guns into the air as the last U.S. plane left. USA Today has another three-word headline, longest war ends. Their Washington bureau chief writes that Operation Enduring Freedom, as it was called in the beginning, was launched at a moment of almost unprecedented national unity with the country reeling from 9/11. On Monday, though, the war finally ended, quote, not with celebration, but recrimination of all that has gone wrong.
You've been looking at the British front pages, haven't you, as well, giving us a real sense of how badly things did go wrong.
Yeah, more colorful headlines outside of the U.S., Stuart. The Eye is talking about fury and fear as the last U.S. flight leaves Kabul. Meanwhile, The Guardian sums it up as chaos and bloodshed. Their front page photo shows the remains of a vehicle that was actually hit by a U.S. drone strike that's believed to have killed 7 Afghan children. You can really feel the frustration and the heartbreak from journalists today. The Independent is talking about war's bitter end. One of their former Afghanistan correspondents writes that the 20th anniversary of 9/11 will be marked by humiliating defeat for the U.S., the U.K., and their allies, and by gathering darkness for Afghans.
We've seen quite a lot of criticism then of the U.S.
Yeah, some of it is coming from U.S. rivals. A Chinese paper, the Global Times, calls it a failed mission, an irresponsible withdrawal that resulted in a debacle too obvious to hide. There's lots of criticism from U.S. allies, too, though. A French paper, the Figaro, headlines that Kabul has been abandoned to the Taliban. The paper calls it a defeat that could have been avoided. A French paper that's on the other side of the political spectrum, meanwhile, L'Humanité, criticizes the U.S. for spending 20 years and hundreds of billions of dollars and failing to produce any significant improvement in the lives of Afghans. This is according to L'Humanité. Many in the U.S., though, are also wondering what this war was all worth in the end. This cartoon from Benjamin Slingstad shows a parting message there from the U.S. You're welcome for the nation building, although clearly, judging by this image, no nation building has really been done.
And Alison has also found that papers are looking ahead to what comes next for Afghanistan.
Yeah, in that last cartoon, we saw the U.S. departure. This next cartoon shows who might be arriving in their absence. This is by Bill Bramhall of the New York Daily News. We see there Air Al-Qaeda, ISIS-K Airlines, and Terror International all getting ready to land their planes. In addition to the threat from terror groups, there's also the Taliban themselves. Libération, the French paper, writes that the future is going to be a nightmare for Afghans. Their front page headline here is a play on words. It's not the jour d'après, the day after, but the jour d'après, the yoke after, yoke as in yoke of oppression. They spoke to residents of Kabul who feel abandoned by the international community and say they fear the return of Taliban oppression. They spoke to women who say they're afraid to go outside. Now, the Taliban has said that they're going to respect women's rights, but many don't see any reason why the group would magically change. That's the idea of this last cartoon from Ann Telnis of the Washington Post. We see a fairy godmother there, which seems to be maybe a U.S. diplomat trying to transform this Taliban fighter. But much like the pumpkin on his head, he remains entirely unchanged.
Summing it up for us, thanks very much, Alison Sargent there with the papers in France 24.